Decisive: How to Make Better Choices in Life and Work, by Chip Heath and Dan Heath. Introduction. Imagine this. Shannon runs a small consulting firm. She's got an IT director named Clive. Now, Clive isn't terrible. He's smart, good at quick fixes. But he coasts, does the minimum, doesn't show much initiative. And worse, he can be pretty sharp with his words in meetings, sometimes downright caustic. Losing him would hurt in the short run. He knows their client database inside out. So, Shannon's stuck. Should she fire him, or not? Now, pause for a second. Think about your own mind. In the few moments it took me to describe Shannon's problem, didn't you already start forming an opinion? Maybe you thought, fire him. Or perhaps, give him one more chance. It's fascinating, isn't it? As the brilliant psychologist Daniel Kahneman, who won a Nobel Prize for his work on decision-making, pointed out, a remarkable aspect of your mental life is that you are rarely stumped. We have opinions, gut feelings, about almost everything. Almost instantly. But here's the rub. When we think about Clive, we're working with the information right in front of us. The details I just gave you. Kahneman called this the spotlight effect. We see clearly what's illuminated, but we forget everything lurking just outside the beam. We instantly jump to fire him or keep him. We don't naturally ask, could his role be changed to fit his strengths? Could a mentor help him? What do his colleagues really think of him? Is Shannon even a good manager? When we start moving that spotlight around, the picture changes dramatically. Making a good decision requires shifting that light, yet our brains often forget there's a world beyond the spotlight's narrow circle. And frankly, looking at humanity's track record, we aren't exactly batting 1,000 when it comes to big choices. People regret careers, executives get fired shortly after being hired, teachers leave the profession quickly. Big money corporate mergers? Over 80% fail to create value. And in our personal lives? Saving for retirement, relationships, smelling the roses? We often fall short. Our brains, it seems, are flawed instruments when it comes to making choices. So, what do? Trust our gut? Well, our gut also tells us that a cheesecake with a calorie count of 3 double cheeseburgers plus Skittles is a fantastic idea after dinner. Our gut led Liz Taylor and Richard Burton to remarry. Despite overwhelming evidence it wouldn't last, it didn't. Maybe careful analysis is the answer? Research shows that even rigorous analysis is useless if the process for making the decision is flawed. In fact, one study found that the decision-making process mattered more than the analysis by a factor of 6. This brings us to the work of Chip Heath and Dan Heath. You might know them from their massive bestsellers, Made to Stick and Switch. They're masters at understanding why we behave the way we do, and how we can do better. In Decisive, they tackle perhaps the most crucial skill of all, making better choices. This isn't just another book describing our biases. It's a practical guide, a roadmap, offering a clear, memorable process designed to counteract the hidden forces that sabotage our decisions. By the end of our journey today, you'll understand the 4 great villains of decision-making, and more importantly, you'll have a powerful 4-step framework, the authors call it RAP, to help you fight back and make choices you can be confident in. Choices that lead to a better life and better work. Book summary. So, why is it so hard to make good choices? We rely on that mental spotlight, focusing intently on the information right in front of us. But what's in that spotlight is often misleading or incomplete. The Heath brothers argue that our decision-making is consistently undermined by 4 specific villains. If we can learn to spot them, we can learn to fight them. Villain 1. Narrow framing. The first villain is narrow framing. This is the tendency to define our choices too narrowly, often boiling them down to a simple whether or not. Think back to Shannon. Should I fire Clive or not? Or think about teenagers deciding, should I go to the party or not? They see only one option under the spotlight, ignoring countless others waiting in the wings. Shockingly, it's not just teenagers. Researcher Paul Nutt spent decades studying organizational decisions, big ones, made by companies like GE and NASA. His findings were astounding. Only 29% of the teams he studied considered more than one alternative. That's actually less than the teenagers in another study. Most organizations, it seems, get stuck in this whether or not trap. And the consequences are real. Nutt found that these single-option decisions failed over half the time in the long run, compared to only about a third for decisions with multiple alternatives. Why? Because when we only consider one option, our energy goes into asking, how can I make this work? Instead of the more vital question, is there a better way? So, the first step in the WAP process is to widen your options. How do we break free from this narrow frame? One simple trick is to become allergic to whether or not decisions. When you hear yourself or someone else framing a choice that way, let an alarm bell ring in your head. Push yourself. What else could I do? Consider the opportunity cost. This is what you give up when you make a choice. Shane Frederick, a decision scientist, was agonizing between a $1,000 stereo and a $700 one. A salesman broke his deadlock by asking, "Would you rather have the Pioneer or the Sony plus $300 worth of albums?" Suddenly, the choice was clear. He hadn't even considered what else that $300 could buy. Research shows that simply reminding people keep the $14.99 for other purchases dramatically changes whether they buy an impulse item like a video. Ask yourself, what else could I do with this same time and money? Another powerful technique is the vanishing options test. Imagine your current options disappear. What else could you do? Margaret Sanders, a career services director, was stuck deciding whether or not to fire her shy administrative assistant, Anna. When asked what she'd do if firing Anna wasn't an option, and she couldn't rely on Anna for the front door social tasks, Sanders instantly generated a new idea. Move Anna to purely administrative tasks and hire cheap work-study students for the front desk. Necessity truly is the mother of invention. When our options vanish, our spotlight is forced to move. Sometimes, widening options means multi-tracking, considering several options simultaneously. Think of Lexicon, the firm that named BlackBerry and Swiffer. When naming Colgate's mini toothbrush, which became the Wisp, they didn't just brainstorm names for small brush. They had multiple teams working in parallel. One team explored metaphors for lightness. Another, blind to the actual product, explored ideas for Olay-branded oral care, tapping into the idea of beauty. This multi-tracking prevents locking in too early and often sparks unexpected connections. It's how Strawberry led to Blackberry. An excursion team looking for things that bring joy and slow us down stumbled upon it. Multi-tracking isn't just about creativity. It makes us smarter. Studies of graphic designers found that those who worked on 3 ad designs simultaneously produced better results and learned more from feedback than those who worked on one design sequentially. Why? Comparing options helps you understand the shape of the problem. It also keeps egos in check. If you have multiple ideas, you're less defensive about criticism of any single one. And counterintuitively, researcher Kathleen Eisenhart found that executives who consider more options actually make faster decisions, partly because comparing options builds confidence and undercuts politics. But how many options? Don't we risk choice overload, like staring at 24 kinds of jam and being unable to pick one? The authors argue that the bigger danger is having only one option. Adding just 1 or 2 more distinct alternatives dramatically improves decision quality, as shown in a study of a German tech firm where decisions with multiple options were 6 times more likely to be rated very good. Just beware of sham options. Like the bureaucratic trick Henry Kissinger described, offering choices like nuclear war, the status quo, or surrender. Real options should have real advocates. And what if you're truly stuck, unable to generate options? Find someone who's solved your problem. This is the wisdom of Sam Walton, founder of Walmart, who constantly scouted competitors like Ben Franklin stores where he found the idea for centralized checkout in Kmart. He famously said, "Most everything I've done I've copied from someone else." You can look outside your organization, like Walton did benchmarking, best practices. But don't forget to look inside. Kaiser Permanente dramatically reduced sepsis deaths by finding and scaling solutions developed by Dr. Diane Craig's team at one of their own hospitals. An internal bright spot. What successes have you had that you could replicate? To make this proactive, create playlists, lists of questions or principles drawn from past successes, internal or external. Advertising consultants Hughes and Johnson use a playlist of questions. What iconography is useful? What is the enemy? To generate dozens of ideas quickly, like the brilliant banana peel trail campaign for Diana's Bananas. A checklist prevents errors. A playlist stimulates ideas. If you're still stuck, ladder up using analogies. Scientists constantly use analogies, comparing a new virus to a known one, or one experiment to another. Lower rungs on the ladder offer close analogies, low risk, low novelty. Higher rungs offer more distant ones, higher risk, higher novelty. Think of the junior high principal trying to speed up the lunch line. He could look at other schools close, then checkout processes anywhere regional, then crowd flow experts like Disney distant, then maybe even plumbers for resource flow very distant, possibly absurd. Fiona Fairhurst designed Speedo's revolutionary fast-skin swimsuit by laddering way up. She didn't just look at swimsuits, she looked at anything that moves fast in water, leading her to sharks and torpedoes. So, to fight narrow framing, widen your options, look for the opportunity cost, run the vanishing options test, multitrack, toggle prevention/promotion, and find those who've solved your problem by looking outside, inside, and in the distance. Villain 2. The confirmation bias. Okay, so you've widened your options. Now you need to evaluate them. Here comes the second villain, the confirmation bias. This is our deeply ingrained habit of seeking out information that supports our existing beliefs and ignoring information that contradicts them. Smokers in the 60s were more interested in articles saying smoking didn't cause cancer. Political partisans seek out news that confirms their views. We think we want truth, but often we're just seeking reassurance. Remember those tone-deaf singers on reality TV who look shocked by negative feedback? They've spent their lives spotlighting praise from friends and family, ignoring anything else. The confirmation bias is insidious because it feels like we're being rational. We're collecting data, after all. But as researcher Dan Lavallo warns, we don't realize we're cooking the books. This bias is strongest when emotions are involved, when we have a motive to believe something, or when we've invested a lot of time in an idea. Even CEOs aren't immune. Studies show that the more media praise a CEO gets, the more likely they are to overpay for acquisitions, blinded by their own hubris. How do we fight this pervasive bias? The second step of RAP. Reality test your assumptions. First, actively consider the opposite. Alfred Sloan, the legendary GM leader, famously postponed a decision when everyone agreed too quickly, asking them to return next time with reasons for disagreement. We need to invite dissent. The Catholic Church used a devil's advocate for centuries when deciding on sainthood. Tellingly, since the office was eliminated, saints have been canonized much faster. In your own life, do you ever seek out people you know will disagree with you? It's uncomfortable, but better than walking blindly into a bad choice. But simple dissent can turn into unproductive arguments. Roger Martin, a business strategist, offers a brilliant technique. When consulting for Inmet Mining, facing a tense debate about closing a mine, he stopped the arguments and asked, what would have to be true for this option to be the right answer? Suddenly, adversaries became collaborators, exploring the conditions under which each option could work. This shifts the frame from defending positions to exploring possibilities. It allows people to disagree without being disagreeable. Second, learn to ask disconfirming questions. We think we're gathering info, but often we're just fishing for support, like asking a job candidate for references they provide. Smart hiring managers ask references for other people to talk to, or they ask specific, factual questions. How many secretaries has this entrepreneur had? Judge Patrick Schiltz advises law students interviewing at firms not to ask, do you have a life outside work? But rather, how many times last week did you have dinner with your family? What time? Did you work after dinner? A study on selling a used iPod showed the power of phrasing, asking, what can you tell me about it? Got only 8% disclosure of a known problem. Asking it doesn't have any problems, does it? Got 61%. But asking what problems does it have? Prompted 89% of sellers to come clean. Tough questions signal you can't be easily fooled. Caveat: in power dynamics, like doctor-patient, open-ended questions are better initially, to avoid biasing the answer. Remember Dr. Barber uncovering that dizziness was really grief? Sometimes the confirmation bias isn't about the questions we ask, but what we even notice. In troubled marriages, partners often start seeing only the negative traits they expect. He's so selfish. Therapist Aaron Beck suggests keeping marriage diaries to consciously track positive actions. One study found 70% of couples improve just by becoming aware of the existing positives. Similarly, leaders like PepsiCo CEO Indra Nooyi advocate assuming positive intent in colleagues' actions. Instead of jumping to negative conclusions, he's just trying to show off. Ask, what's another possibility? This simple shift can diffuse anger and defensiveness. An extreme way to consider the opposite is to run a deliberate mistake. Consultant Paul Showmaker challenged his firm's assumption that responding to RFP's requests for proposals was always a waste of time. They deliberately responded to the next RFP they got, and landed over $1 million in business. One woman in another study even ended up marrying a man she agreed to date as a deliberate mistake after rejecting him multiple times. Third, learn to zoom out and zoom in. Our default is the inside view. Our own impressions of the specific situation. My Thai restaurant will be a hit. The outside view ignores the specifics and looks at the larger class. How do restaurants like this usually fare? The outside view relies on base rates, statistics about similar situations. For restaurants, maybe 60% fail in 3 years. This feels harsh. We think we're different. But often, we're more typical than we think. Ignoring base rates isn't brave. It's egotistical. Even experts get trapped. Daniel Kahneman tells a story of his curriculum writing team, including an expert dean, estimating their project would take 2 years. When asked for the base rate, the dean admitted most similar projects took 7 to 10 years, and 40% never finished. Their project took 8 years. The lesson: ask experts for base rates what usually happens. Not predictions what will happen to me. But base rates can feel cold and abstract. That's why we also need to zoom in for a close-up. This adds texture and intuition. Think of reading TripAdvisor reviews. The average star rating is the outside view, but reading individual reviews gives you the close-up. Maybe the low rating is due to high prices, which you don't mind. Franklin D. Roosevelt mastered this. He used polling and mail statistics outside view but also read sample letters himself close-up. Xerox CEO Ann Mulcahy made executives serve as customer officer of the day to get a close-up on complaints. Going to the Genba, the real place where action happens, is another close-up technique. Paul Smith at P&G stocked competitors' paper towels in the office bathrooms, giving colleagues a visceral close-up that lab data couldn't provide. Brian Zickman Fisher, facing a life-or-death bone marrow transplant decision, consulted medical study base rates zooming out and talked to other patients via email lists to understand the lived experience zooming in. Combining the outside view and the close-up gives the most realistic perspective. Finally, the ultimate reality test is often to run small experiments before making a big leap. John Hanks at National Instruments didn't commit millions to wireless sensors immediately. He first built a crude brick and a bucket prototype for a demanding UCLA project in the Costa Rican jungle. Why predict when you can test? Students considering pharmacy school should work in a pharmacy first. Peggy, the perfectionist legal secretary terrified of errors, by gradually reducing her proofreading passes, and even deliberately leaving small errors, discovering the sky didn't fall. Aligns with prototyping in design, small tests of change in healthcare, and firing bullets then cannonballs in business. Why don't we do it more? Overconfidence. We think we can predict the future, but research by Philip Tetlock shows experts are terrible predictors, often worse than simple algorithms. Entrepreneurs, interestingly, often avoid prediction and favor testing. As one told researcher Sarah Sarasvathy, instead of asking all the questions, I'd try and make some sales. Bill Gross tested the idea for carsdirect.com by putting up a basic website to see if anyone would even try to buy one car online. They sold 3 overnight. Intuit founder Scott Cook now advocates leadership by experiment, citing how a successful service for Indian farmers started as a pilot he thought was harebrained. Even parenting can use Uching. Gabe Gabrielson let his son Colin try wearing PJs to breakfast for 3 days. proving it didn't make him late for school. But ooching has limits. It's bad for situations requiring commitment. Someone who knows they need a degree shouldn't ooch by taking one class a semester. That's just stalling. But someone exploring marine biology should ooch. Ooching should speed up learning, not delay commitment. And in hiring, maybe the best ooch is a work sample or trial contract, because interviews are notoriously poor predictors of performance. Remember Dan Heath almost rejecting his future star art director, Rob Crumb, based on a flawed interview impression, saved only by a blind work sample? So, to fight confirmation bias, reality test your assumptions. Consider the opposite using techniques like Martin's question. Ask disconfirming questions. Assume positive intent. Run deliberate mistakes. Zoom out for base rates. Zoom in for a close-up. And ooch whenever possible. Villain 3. Short-term emotion. You've widened your options. You've reality tested them. Now it's time to choose. But here comes the third villain. Short-term emotion. This is the swirl of feelings, fear, excitement, anxiety, greed, lust, that can hijack our decisions in the moment, making us choose things we later regret. Think of the fear car buyers feel when approached by a salesman. Salesmen are trained to exploit this. Get the customer excited, feeling the wheel, creating false urgency, making them feel obligated, all to bypass rational thought. We know the folk wisdom. Sleep on it. That helps, because visceral emotion fades. But often, we need more strategy. The third step in RAP is to attain distance before deciding. Andrew Hallam, the millionaire teacher, attained literal distance by refusing to visit car lots, doing all his research and negotiation by phone to avoid emotional pressure. Mostly, though, the distance we need is emotional. A powerful tool for this is October 10, 2010, developed by Susie Welsh. Ask yourself, how will I feel about this decision 10 minutes from now? 10 months from now? 10 years from now? This forces us to give the future emotional weight, counteracting the intensity of the present. Annie was agonizing over whether to tell her boyfriend Carl I love you first. 10 minutes from now? Nervous but proud. 10 months? No regrets, even if it doesn't work out. 10 years? It won't matter much either way. The October 10, 2010 view made it clear she should do it, despite the short-term fear. Use this for work decisions too. Avoiding that tough conversation feels good now, but how will you feel in 10 months? Offering that hotshot candidate a huge salary feels exciting now, but what about 10 months or 10 years down the line? Short-term emotion isn't always loud, like fear or anger. Sometimes it's subtle. Consider the mere exposure principle. We develop a preference for things simply because they're familiar. Students like nonsense words more if they saw them flashed on a blackboard more often, even unconsciously. We even prefer the mirror image of our own face which we see daily over our true face which others see, while our loved ones prefer the opposite. Worryingly, repetition can even make false statements feel true. This means we might cling to familiar ideas or processes just because they feel comfortable, not because they're actually better. Combine mere exposure with loss aversion. The fact that losses feel much more painful than equivalent gains feel pleasant. Most people wouldn't take a coin flip where heads wins $100 but tails loses $50, because the pain of losing $50 looms larger than the pleasure of winning $100. Loss aversion explains why people overpay for warranties and why students who were given a university mug instantly valued it at $7.12, while students who didn't get one would only pay $2.87 for it. We get attached to what we have, instantly. Mere exposure plus loss aversion equals a powerful status quo bias. Even innovators fight it. Max Levchin and the PayPal founders initially created groundbreaking security software for Palm Pilots. When users inexplicably started flocking to their crude web demo, especially eBay users, the founders actively resisted. Go away. We don't want you. Why? The Palm Pilot app was their baby, technologically superior, familiar mere exposure. Abandoning it felt like a huge loss aversion. Eventually, they saw the light, ditched the Palm Pilot 12,000 users for the web over 1 million users, an emotional but completely obvious business decision. If even a clear choice like that felt hard, Imagine how these forces affect our ambiguous decisions. How do we get distance from these subtle biases? Try looking from an observer's perspective. Andy Grove broke Intel's paralysis over the memory chip business by asking, "What would our successors do?" That imaginary distance instantly clarified the need to exit memory chips. Research shows this works because distance helps us focus on the most important factors. When choosing between a prestigious but grueling job A, and a fulfilling but less lucrative one, job B, students were more likely to recommend job B to their best friend 83% than choose it for themselves 66%. Why? When advising others, we see the forest long-term happiness. When deciding for ourselves, we get lost in the trees, dad's expectations, peer comparisons. Our advice to others also naturally downplays short-term fears. Guys advise friends to call the girl they like, even if they'd hesitate themselves. So, perhaps the single most powerful question for distance is, what would I tell my best friend to do in this situation? Try it next time you're stuck. The clarity can be surprising. So, to fight short-term emotion, attain distance. Use October 10, 2010 to balance present and future feelings. Recognize the pull of mere exposure and loss aversion toward the status quo, and gain clarity by asking what your successor or your best friend would do. Villain 4. Overconfidence. You've widened your options, reality tested them, and attained distance. You've made a choice. But wait, there's one more villain lurking. Overconfidence about how the future will unfold. Remember Decca Records turning down the Beatles? Groups are out. 4-piece groups with guitars, particularly, are finished. Or the experts who proclaimed themselves completely certain about diagnoses but were wrong 40% of the time? We think we know more than we do. We shine our spotlight on the information close at hand and draw conclusions, forgetting about the vast darkness of the unknown future. Whoops! The Internet. The future is not a single point we can predict. It's a range of possibilities. Fighting overconfidence means preparing for that range. This is the final step of RAP. Prepare to be wrong. One powerful technique is bookending the future. Instead of guessing a single outcome, estimate the lower bookend, a pessimistic scenario, and the upper bookend, an optimistic one. Investor Byron Penstock used this to evaluate Coinstar, owner of Redbox, when studios cut off its DVD supply. His lower bookend, selling off Redbox for parts, suggested a $21 stock price. His upper bookend, Redbox thrives, suggested $62. When the actual price dipped near $28, he saw huge potential upside and limited downside, so he invested heavily. As the price rose toward $46, nearing the middle, he sold, locking in a 75% return. He seeks situations where the current reality is skewed toward the lower bookend. Research confirms that explicitly considering the high and low ends makes our estimates of ranges much more accurate. We tap different knowledge when thinking about extremes. For life decisions, bookending isn't just about placing bets, it's about preparation. How do you prepare for the lower bookend? Think insurance, contingency plans. For the upper bookend? Think scalability, handling unexpected success. To generate these bookends, use prospective hindsight. Instead of asking what might happen, assume an outcome has already happened and work backward. Ask, it's a year from now, and this project was a total fiasco. What went wrong? This is Gary Klein's premortem. It surfaces potential failures more effectively than just speculating. The 100,000 Homes campaign used a similar analysis MIA and identified a potential legal snag regarding fair housing laws. By addressing it proactively with a legal expert, they eliminated a major threat. The flip side is the preparade. It's a year from now, and we're heroes. How do we make sure we're ready for this success? Minnetonka anticipated soft soap could be a blockbuster. Realizing the plastic pump supply was limited, they preemptively bought options for the entire world's supply, locking out competitors for crucial years. What about preparing for things you can't foresee? Use a safety factor. Engineers calculate the load a ladder needs to hold, say, 400 pounds, and then multiply by a safety factor, say, 6, building it to withstand 2,400 pounds. Elevator cables might have a safety factor of 11. Software projects add buffer time 30 to 50% to schedules. It's a crude but effective acknowledgement of our inherent overconfidence. Anticipating problems, even if you can't prevent them, helps us cope. The realistic job preview RJP shows this. Call centers that explicitly warn applicants about angry customers, low pay, and tough conditions actually reduce turnover. Why? It's not just that the wrong people drop out. It acts like a vaccine. Exposing people to a small dose of reality prepares them. So when they encounter the negative aspects, they aren't shocked or disillusioned. RJP's increased job satisfaction, even when given after hiring. You can use this idea yourself? Get an RJP for a product launch or even college life. Mental simulation, used in therapy, is similar. Sandra, nervous about asking for a raise, scripted and rehearsed the conversation, anticipating potential negative responses and planning her countermoves. This preparation helped her succeed. Finally, we need tripwires, signals that snap us out of autopilot and force us to reconsider a decision. We drift along, often forgetting we have a choice. Like the woman who dreams of Italy but keeps postponing until it's too late. When did she choose not to go? Tripwires prevent this drift. Van Halen's brown M&Ms were a tripwire for quality control. Zappos' $1,000 quit offer is a tripwire forcing new hires to consciously commit. Kodak desperately needed tripwires based on digital adoption rates. We will act when digital satisfaction hits 10% to break their inertia. Deadlines are common tripwires. Even artificial ones work. Students were more likely to complete a survey for $5 with a deadline than without. Research grant submissions dropped when deadlines were removed. Deadlines force attention. Partitions act as tripwires too, breaking up consumption. Eating cookies one by one from foil wrappers takes much longer than from an open box. Gamblers bet less with money in separate envelopes. Venture capitalists often release funds in rounds, partitioning the investment to force reassessment. Partitions combat escalating commitment, throwing good money after bad. I've already put so much in. Set budget or time limits for uncertain ventures, like your spouse's topiary business idea. Tripwires aren't just cautious. They enable risk-taking by capping the downside and quieting your mind until the trigger is hit. Some tripwires are based on pattern recognition. Lucile Packard Children's Hospital implemented rapid response teams (RRTs). The key tripwire wasn't just objective vital signs, but the nurse's feeling, "Call the RRT if you are worried about a patient." This legitimized intuition and caught problems earlier, drastically reducing code calls and mortality. Similarly, Peter Drucker urged businesses to watch for unexpected success, like the accidental discoveries leading to Rogaine from a blood pressure drug side effect and Viagra from a failed angina drug trial. Labeling a pattern lemurs for pilots feeling something's wrong makes it easier to spot and act on. A tripwire gives us that precious realization. I have a choice to make. So, to fight overconfidence, prepare to be wrong. Bookend the future, run premortems and preparades, use safety factors, get realistic previews, simulate mentally, and set tripwires based on dates, budgets, partitions, or patterns. Trusting the process. That's the WAP framework. Widen your options, reality test your assumptions, attain distance before deciding, and prepare to be wrong. It's a process designed to counteract the four villains that plague our decisions. But making a decision, especially in a group, isn't just about getting the right answer. It's also about fairness. People need to feel the process was just, even if they disagree with the outcome. This is procedural justice. Research on court cases shows that losers who felt the process was fair, they were heard, the judge used accurate info, explained the ruling, were almost as satisfied as winners who felt the process was unfair. Using the WAP steps openly contributes to this fairness. So does involving people through bargaining or compromise. It might seem slow, but Nutt found that while bargaining took slightly longer initially, it dramatically improved decision success and sped up implementation because people bought in. To show people you're genuinely listening and considering their views, try stating their position back even better than they did, like mediator Robert Mnookin, or defend your own decision by acknowledging its flaws, like NetApp founder Dave Hitz. This builds trust in the process, not just the individual decision. Matt Dorigo's story with his nonprofit ARTS embodies trusting the process. Born from personal tragedy, losing his mother to cancer while his sister battled lymphoma, his passion was to use art therapy to help kids facing adversity, just as painting had helped him cope. After 10 years of building ARTS successfully in San Diego, he felt stuck, torn between deepening local roots and pursuing a national vision. Instead of framing it as stay or leave, a mentor helped him widen options. Why can't you do both? He reality tested by talking to peers and board members, and ooched with a local partnership La Maestra to test his expansion model. He attained distance when asked how he'd feel in 10 years if arts remained only local, realizing his core priorities demanded growth. He prepared to be wrong by addressing board concerns, hiring staff, setting a deadline tripwire. His passion fueled the journey, but a thoughtful process guided his choices. Ultimately, a good process provides confidence. Not the overconfidence of ignoring risks, but the quiet confidence that you've done the work, considered the angles, and made the best choice you could. It quiets the "what am I missing?" anxiety. And paradoxically, trusting a process can make you bolder. Like a safety harness for a climber, it gives you the freedom to explore risky terrain. And often, boldness is needed. Studies of the elderly find regrets usually center not on actions taken, but on chances not taken, on hesitation and indecisiveness. Being decisive isn't an inherited trait, it's a way of behaving, enabled by a process you can trust. The RAP process won't guarantee perfect outcomes. Luck still plays a role, but it can steer us toward better, wiser choices. And the right choice, at the right time, can indeed make all the difference. Commentary. Isn't it fascinating, and perhaps a little unsettling, to realize how much our choices are shaped by these invisible mental quirks? The spotlight that blinds us, the biases that pull us off course, the emotions that cloud our judgment. We all face this, every day, whether we're deciding on a career path, navigating a relationship, or just figuring out what to have for lunch. The Heath brothers, in Decisive, don't just diagnose the problem. They offer a cure, or at least, a powerful treatment. What I find most compelling about the WAP framework is its sheer practicality. It's not some abstract theory. It's a toolkit. Widen, reality test, attain distance, prepare. 4 simple steps that act as guardrails, keeping us from veering into those common decision traps. It acknowledges that our brains aren't perfect, but reassures us that we don't have to be passive victims of our biases. We can actively fight back. Think about the power unlocked by just one of these techniques. How many times have you felt utterly stuck between option A and option B, only to realize, perhaps much later, that option C was waiting just outside your awareness? That's the magic of deliberately widening your options. Or consider the simple act of asking, "What would I tell my best friend?" How often does that instantly cut through the fog of your own short-term worries and reveal the path aligned with your deeper values? That's attaining distance in action. The beauty here is that you don't need hours of deliberation for every choice. Even a quick mental check can make a difference. Facing a quick decision? Just ask, am I falling into narrow framing? Is there one more option I should consider? Am I rushing due to emotion? Can I take 10 minutes or even 10 seconds to apply the October 10, 2010 rule? Am I overconfident? What's one thing that could go wrong, and how can I prepare for it? If there's one simple action you could take away today, maybe it's this. The next time you face a choice that feels like option A or nothing, actively force yourself to find an option B and an option C. Just generating those alternatives, even if you stick with A, changes the way you think about the decision. Or try this. The next time you feel that knot of anxiety about a choice, step outside yourself and ask what advice you'd give to someone you care about in the exact same situation. That shift in perspective can be incredibly clarifying. Ultimately, Decisive empowers us. It tells us that making better choices isn't about having superhuman intuition or a crystal ball. It's about having a reliable process. Trusting that process allows us to be more confident, not because we're certain of the outcome, but because we're certain we've made the choice thoughtfully and deliberately. It frees us from endless agonizing and allows us to act with greater clarity and courage. That was our exploration of Decisive by Chip Heath and Dan Heath. We've touched upon the core ideas today, the villains that trip us up and the rap process that helps us stand firm. But honestly, a summary like this is just scratching the surface. The real insights often come from the stories, the nuances, the way the authors connect these ideas to real lives and real dilemmas. This summary aims to give you a strong sense of whether this book's approach resonates with you. If you felt a spark of recognition in these ideas, if you found yourself nodding along thinking, yes, that's what happens to me, then I truly encourage you to pick up a copy of Decisive. Reading it isn't just about learning techniques, it's about fundamentally upgrading the operating system you use to navigate life's most important moments. You can find a link to the book in the description below. And if this journey through Decisive brought you some value today, do give us a thumbs up and consider subscribing to Billionaire's Bookshelf. We delve into transformative books like this regularly, aiming to extract the wisdom that can help us all build better lives and make better choices. Join us next time as we continue exploring the ideas that shape success. Let's keep learning and growing together.